RJ from Ortonville, who's here to talk about growing up in a haunted house.
This started in very early 80s. I was a very young 6 or 7 years old when it started. And she had this feeling come over her of pure dread, like she had to get out of there now. So she went to leave the bedroom. Something grabbed a hold of her, put her on the floor, held her down, could not move, and she could not speak. That is what she said. So, of course, she freaked out, thought she was going crazy, covered herself in the blanket until daylight.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. RJ, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I do have the familiarity with living in haunted spaces. I certainly have experienced that in my own case, but not as a child. And so I know you said you grew up in a haunted house. Where did this start for you?
This started in Ortonville, Michigan. Very early 80s. I was a very young, 6 or 7 years old when it started. But it affected my older siblings and my parents, obviously. We moved there in 1977. The house was only a couple years old when we moved in. And around 1980 is when the activity began. We had a cabin in mid-Michigan. And we were up there when my oldest sister stayed at our house in Ortonville, and she had quite an experience. She woke up in the middle of the night, being alone in the house, and saw an entity in front of her who, from the top half of his body, was solid as you and I, but from the waist down, there was nothing. He was transparent. So, of course, she freaked out, thought she was going crazy, covered herself with the blanket until daylight, and then she looked again, and he wasn't there anymore.
Oh, thank God. Huh?
Yeah, that's quite an experience, especially being a teenager. So
yeah, absolutely. That's terrifying. And she was all alone in the house when this happened.
Yeah, all alone. And we were out in the country, too. Neighbors, half a football field away. So, this is 1980 or so. So I'm sure she was terrified, and she was. We still talk about it to this day. So we get back from being up north, and she's telling my parents what happened. And of course, they tell her it's your imagination. You're a teenager.
Sure it is.
Everything's fine. You were dreaming. And for a while, she was okay with it. She said, okay, yes, maybe. But then another experience happened. So we were up north again. Everything happened when someone's alone. Mm. And she was going to bed in my parents' bedroom. And she had the light on. She was ready to turn it off, get into bed. And she saw this entity walk in through the sliding glass door, which led out to the deck, and walk into their big, huge dresser and disappear.
Oh my God.
And she, quite honestly, she had had enough after that, and she subsequently moved out a few days later.
Were these both the same entity? Did she see the same thing both times, or were they a different thing?
Thought was the same entity, correct? Yes.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I don't blame her for moving. That's a lot to absorb, and yeah. Oof.
Yeah, especially a teenager and being the only one at that point to have experienced it. I'm sure it weighed heavily on her that there's something here,
right?
And get away from it. So I don't blame her.
How old was this house? Was it a very old house, or what was the history of the house? Do you know?
No, it was, like I said, it was, we moved in 1977. The house was built in 1974, so it was only 3 years old, and the activity began in 1980.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it was built on old farmland, but.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, Lord knows land can have a history too, and that certainly can be a segue for activity later on. But yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to understand, was this a several hundred-year-old home, or was it something newer? And yeah, that can happen. A lot of people attribute it with the age of a dwelling, but it doesn't have to be that at all.
Sure, yeah, I agree totally. And the only conclusion, and of course this was decades ago, but we had done no research, mind you, but the only conclusion we came to was that we assumed that he was a member of the Underground Railroad, which there were some abandoned Underground Railroad tracks down the street from the house.
Okay.
So, and I believe they're still there to this day. So we assumed that maybe that's where he came from. He was tied to the surrounding area. Maybe neighbors experienced him too. We don't know. We never spoke about it.
Yeah. It's not usually something you bring up to your neighbors. Yeah.
Yes, we don't. Yes, go to neighbor functions or neighborhood functions and say, "Hey, have you seen a entity in your house?"
Yeah. Can you did she ever describe what he looked like though? I mean, physically, what did this gentleman appear like?
Yes, he was a black man.
Okay.
Who would stare at you and always smile.
Oh, okay.
And had old clothes on. But yes, he was a black man, middle-aged, old clothes, always looking at you directly and always smiling eerily.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a happy smile, it was just a grin kind of thing, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. I never saw him myself.
Sure.
The sightings that's been described to me, it's somewhat frightening.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so the gentleman appeared twice. She moved out, and what happened next?
So then my other sister, my oldest sister is 12 years older than me. My other sister is 4 years older than me. Mm-hmm. The oldest sister moved out. My sister, who's 4 years older than me, I'm sorry, recorded a song off the radio. Now, back in the 80s, I'm sure, as you remember, you would have to tape recorder to record the music. It's not like today.
Sure.
So there was a song she liked. She recorded it. And when it was played back, he came over the song. It's so creepy. I wish I had it with me. And you could still hear the song in the background as this voice came on. And it was this very eerie, weird noise. I don't know how to explain it. And the entity said, or the voice, whatever it was, said, "I am going to get," and then it said Ronnie. Now, my father and I shared the same name. And then after it said that, there was some odd language that you couldn't understand, along with the odd noises with that. And you could still hear the song in the background on top of it.
Oh, wow.
And for a minute or so, and then the actual song came back on.
Oh, that's horrifying.
That is horrifying. And being a small child as I was, hearing that, I thought, well, this is very frightening.
Yeah.
Very, very. What have we moved into here?
How old were you at this point?
Oh, I was about 10 or 12 at this point.
Okay, so you weren't like a toddler, but you were, yeah, okay, gotcha. Yikes.
Yeah, that was very, very scary. And, you know, back then, doing that, being out in the country on a tape recorder, it's not like anyone could make anything like that, especially with the song itself still in the background. It would have completely cut out something to that effect. So, yeah, very odd. Very odd.
Ugh. Wow. Yeah, that's creepy. And so it did seem like it might have been even malicious, not just there.
It did, but it never, up to that point anyway, it never did anything malicious. Everything was just very odd, bizarre.
Yeah.
But nothing malicious, no.
Okay. Yikes.
Yeah. So, shortly after that, I had a motorcycle. I would ride it around. My friends had motorcycles too. We would all ride them together. And I told a friend of mine, come on over Sunday and we'll, you know, ride bikes together in the trails, because we lived next to this open land and a bunch of trails that we would ride on. And that morning we had to go to my grandmother's, which I had no idea. So we went, and my friend came over, had an experience which I did not know till the next day in school. So the next day, you know, I apologized to him. Sorry I wasn't there. You know, and we had to go to my grandmother's. I wasn't aware. I apologized. And he said, oh, that's okay, but something weird happened. And I, you know, was absolutely intrigued at what happened. And he said that he came over, came to the back door like I instructed him to, because, you know, backdoor friends are best. Just come on over and go to the back door. And and he said that he was knocking and nobody answered. Of course, we weren't there, but he said there was a black man sitting in the table right inside the door wall, which is where our little table was in the kitchen. And his back was facing to him, but he would never turn to him, would look at him, wouldn't acknowledge him, wouldn't say anything to him, wouldn't speak to him. And after a while, and he was asking for me, of course, and after a while, he said he felt a little weird, so he left.
Yeah. Oh.
And well, that is extremely odd, because growing up, I never spoke about this to anyone in school, because I didn't want to be, you know, made fun of or be the odd person out. So.
Wow. So he looked like a person sitting there. It wasn't like translucent or whatever.
No, said he was as solid as, he said it was absolutely a person. Just a person sitting there, which I still didn't admit to him or anyone in school after that.
Yeah.
I just simply told him that it's my father's friend and he is deaf and he didn't hear you.
Sure. I mean, yeah. That's a good save though. I gotta give you credit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because I just still didn't want to let that out in school, because I didn't want to be the odd man out. So I just came up with that excuse. And then when I got home, of course, I called my oldest sister to confirm, you know, yeah, there was something weird going on there.
Wow. Yeah, that's profound. I mean, I don't know. We can only guess, but when I like to think that for them to manifest so completely has got to be an incredibly energetic act, you know, and maybe reflects the ability of the spirit or presence, as it will, you know. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, she had that tape for the longest time. And I told her, you need to, you know, record that on CD or something so we can preserve it.
Right.
Never did. And of course now she doesn't know where it's at or what happened. Oh. And, you know, it's unfortunate, because that is a very eerie, scary, telling recording of an entity.
Yeah. That's amazing. You know, those are Class A EVPs, they call them in the research end of it, and they're incredibly rare.
Oh, yes. And mind you, this was mid-1980s off of a tape recorder, off a song taped off the radio. We were able to manipulate that and speak. Mm-hmm. And it's just profound. It gives me chills thinking about it to this day, hearing that.
Yeah. Was it a little bit, maybe assuring that somebody else had seen it that wasn't attached to the whole situation at all? Just being a friend, was that maybe acknowledging or make you feel better that it wasn't just you guys?
Well, it was to my oldest sister, obviously.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Of course, she was, as if I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I know. Here's reassurance, recognition. Now we have a friend of RJ's and a voice off of a recording. So there's something going on. Whereas before that, everyone just kind of poo-pooed it, so to speak. As if there's something going on here. It's your imagination.
Well, I think that's powerful, but. What happens next?
So my mom gets up in the middle of the night to go out into the kitchen to get herself a drink of water. And there is this same entity sitting at the same table my friend saw him at and I just spoke with her earlier about this, with a straw hat on, sitting at the table with what looked to be a halo above him, illuminating him, with a smile on his face looking at her.
That's incredible. Wow.
And she freaked out, thought someone had broken into the house, ran to the master bedroom, woke my father up, and told him someone broke in. So my father got up, looked throughout the entire house. Of course, no one was there, no broken entry,
sure.
Nothing there. But she knows what she saw. She was very wide awake, and still to this day, her description of that gives me chills. Just to imagine walking into your kitchen and seeing some being there,
right,
looking at you, illuminated. It's
right.
Crazy.
It's so curious that it's always this presence is always smiling, and then to hear that there was some almost like a halo. Also, what are you dealing with? That's the curious part,
Absolutely. And back then, of course, there were no investigators or anything like that we have nowadays. I wish there were. Certainly, or maybe not me because I was young, but certainly would have had my parents or my sister call someone in to investigate that house to see what's going on.
Wow. Yeah. No kidding. So now your mom is at an encounter and your friend and your sister. So it seems to be gradually over time revealing itself to a sense,
Yeah, very slowly, but very surely, letting itself be known, which is frightening. Right. Because, you don't know what it is, what's there. Is it real? Mm-hmm. Is everyone imagining something? It's scary.
Yeah, like some shared hallucination, but that's incredible. And there's quite a bit of time between these as well, right? They're not just bunched up.
No, this happened over a period of about 10 years. The activity began about 1980. It ended about 1990, 1991. So very slow, methodical, if you will. And the revealing of itself or activity.
Right. Huh. So what happens next then?
So let me think. What did happen next? Yeah, I know. I know about the stepmom. Was that? I guess my stepmother was the next occurrence, which happened around 1990.
Okay.
Parents had got a divorce.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it happens. And my stepmother moved in, and I told her about the house being haunted and the experiences. Of course, she wasn't a believer. She, it's your imagination, whatever, and that's okay. Everyone, has their own opinion of things. So, I'm 16, 17, and a friend of mine and I went to a party, came back middle of the night, and, we're out in the country, same house. Every light in the house is on, porch lights on, floodlights are on in the backyard, and this is the middle of the night, and I'm thinking, well, something is not right.
Yeah.
Pull in, and I say to my friend, let's go, come in with me because I don't know what's going on. I'd have to stay the night at your house. So we walk in. My stepmother's at the kitchen counter, freaked out, the most disturbed, freaked out I've ever seen someone, to be honest with you. I'll never forget it. And I was a teenager, so it was freaking me out. And she kept telling the same story over and over again, repeatedly. And I listened to it, a few times before I said, okay, I'm done, and went to stay the night at my friend's house. But what she said was, my father was outside in his garage. She was alone in the house. She went into the closet to get something in the master bedroom. And she had this feeling come over her of pure dread.
Ooh.
Like she had to get out of there now. So she went to leave the bedroom. Something grabbed hold of her, put her on the floor, held her down, could not move, and she could not speak. That is what she said. Over and over again. And I just could not believe it. It would not let her do anything, apparently. And then after, period of time, I'm sure, whatever period of time it was, I'm sure it was too long.
Yeah.
Was able to regain her movement and get up and get out of that room.
Wow. That's got to be horrifying. So it wasn't like she was sleeping and had this like a sleep paralysis kind of incident. She's wide awake, engaging in her evening or whatever, and is suddenly overcome with this feeling, and pow, she's on the floor and can't move.
Absolutely, yes. Went into the master closet to retrieve something. Had that overwhelming feeling of dread, as she described it. Dread, like she had to get out of there. She kept saying that. Like, I need to leave now.
Yeah.
And upon her exit, she was forced down, held down, and was unable to move.
Oh, my gosh. That's terrifying.
Absolutely. And the odd thing about it is, after that day, now she lived there for years after that, so, okay. And I can only assume nothing ever happened because she never spoke of it, but after that day, she never spoke about that experience ever. Even if I were to bring it up, like a talk of ghosts or paranormal activity came up, she would never, ever talk about it. Oh. Even if I looked her in the eye and asked her what happened, she would dismiss it. Not even look at you, just look away and not say a word.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have just been a shatterer for her. Now, and she was initially skeptical of all this stuff. Was that your take?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We informed her when she moved in about the activity that had occurred, and she dismissed it, laughed it off, said, no, that stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hell of a way to have your paradigm shifted,
And, I felt sorry for her that night, because seeing someone go through that type of trauma and the look in her eye and the way she was physically shaking, trembling, freaking out, I'll never forget that. I thought that this is crazy. What is going on here?
Right. Oh, yikes. Now, can I ask you, RJ, and I don't mean to pry, but I'm just curious. Did your family have a religious background at all, or were you guys observing any religious traditions regularly?
We were not at all whatsoever.
Okay. I was just curious. Okay. Not that it matters, because, of course, it can go either way. It can be no factor at all, or it can sometimes be a factor. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, there was no, the only, and I've thought about that over the years too, because like I've said, I've been a big paranormal fan since I've been a kid because of the activity in the household I grew up in. But
sure,
we did, my parents did finish the basement a couple of years after we moved in. Maybe that stirred up the activity, all the construction and stuff going on, maybe, woke something up that was there.
Right. Yeah.
And he decided to come back periodically. I don't know. It's just very odd.
Yeah. Was it an in-ground basement, or was it above ground basement, or how did that work?
In-ground and no walkout either.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It could very well have, taken and brought something back to life in a sense, because activity like that can certainly, as I'm sure you're aware, and most of the listeners I'm sure are aware of that. But if you ever want to know if you're haunted, start working on your house. That seems to be the big thing. It's like, if something's there, that'll wake it up,
True. In a lot of cases, that does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really wild. And I don't know if it's an attachment to the property, or is it just the activity bothers them, or what? It's anybody's guess, but yeah, that definitely does seem to be a trigger for activity to start up. So that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we never spoke about this to the neighbors because, no one wanted to bring that up.
Right. Yeah.
Mention something like that.
Yeah, it was a different world back then, in the 80s and stuff. I think people were having the discussions somewhat, but it was still very closely guarded. It was, nobody just went around to talk about spirits and stuff, because you'd be that person, and it would be you'd be kind of a pariah, I think, in your community.
You're exactly right. I agree 100%. Back then, obviously it wasn't as, open as it is today, wasn't as normal. So you kept that a secret. You kept it close to the vest.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh. So your stepmom had this encounter, and then was it quiet after that for a while? How much of a distance these were years apart, these different instances, would you suppose?
My sister's experience happened, like I said, about 1980.
Yep.
The tape recording and my friend's experience happened early 80s,
okay.
mid 80s. And then my mom's experience happened about that same time frame.
Okay.
And then my stepmother's attack, I guess you should call it.
Sure.
Happened around 1990.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So we've covered about a decade here. Okay. And then what happens?
And then, after that, things were a little quiet. I do remember about that same time, I was sitting in the kitchen, about the same seat she was sitting in when she was telling my friend and I about her experience. And I was alone, and I was having cereal for dinner. I was alone, and it was early. I was going to go to bed. I had school the next day. And then our staircase to the basement was about 15 feet in front of me. And the hallway to the bedrooms was about 15 feet behind me. And then all of a sudden, there were these, the only way I can describe it is a feet stomping.
Mm-hmm.
Bang, bang. It started from the from the staircase rather, went past me at the counter, And when it went past me, I remember I went into the next seat over because I thought, I don't want to be next to this thing, whatever it is.
Right.
Because you can't see it, you can hear it moving. And I remember that I could hear the silverware in the drawer shaking and pounding, whatever it was, past me to the hallway and stopped. I'll never forget that experience. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is that? What can cause that?
Right.
And being a teenager, it frightened me, of course, and I went to bed afterwards. Of course, I didn't finish my cereal, but I lay there in bed alone thinking, what could that be? What just happened? What did I experience? That's weird.
Right. Just such an intimidating thing, right?
Yeah, it's just odd. I don't know if it was angry at that point because he attacked my stepmother. Now he's stomping his feet by me. Right. To send a message. I don't know. It's just very, very odd, a very odd house to grow up in. And,
I'm so amazed by the ability of people to adapt, because this is the place where you're home. This is it. This is the safe place. And yet it was so unusual. And yet you had these profound activities happening, but it was still just business as usual. It's like, well, that happened. Time for bed, and I'm thinking, could you sleep? Could I sleep after such profound activity like that? And it just really is an incredible testament to your spirit or your family's spirit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course, needless to say, I did not sleep that night because I was waiting for something to occur, which it didn't that night. But yeah, it was just a very odd occurrence. Of course, I came to no conclusion as to any household function that could create that type of experience. So I had to chalk it up to something otherworldly.
Yeah. And it's such an incredible phenomena when you think about it, because this is something that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't seem to have any mass, and there's probably an energetic presence, and yet can affect the environment in such a way as if it was an elephant stomping through. It's like, wow, just incredible.
Yeah, nobody else, claimed any experience like that. So I'm just glad, looking back, I'm just glad it was only a sound and no ghostly figure to accompany it, because I probably would have out of there and left.
That's an amazing thing. You hear about disembodied footsteps, but those are generally, the boots, walking down the hall, or the hard shoes, stomping around. But these are impacts, is what you're hearing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The way I described it when I was younger, was sledgehammers hitting the floor. That's the way I described it, because it was so hard, so impactful, so loud, so boisterous. And, the floor was shaking. Like I said, there was you could hear the silverware in the drawer shaking. There was vibration to it. Something was happening enough to cause a vibration and a noise. What that was, I can only speculate.
Take us on the next step. You've got me hooked here.
A little bit earlier than that, I forgot about this experience. We went up north to the cabin a lot. My sister was taxed with having the chore to come and feed our dog. So she brought a friend over who wanted to have an experience. So he said, that's fine. You can come over. Nothing will probably happen, but whatever. So she came over to the house to feed our dog. Her friend went into the house and, upon feeding the dog and leaving the house, my sister, asked if anything, crazy happened. And she said, well, a couple things happened, but I don't think it's paranormal. She said, I heard some rumblings in the cabinet, which, she wasn't sure what that was. It's like, okay, well, it can't be, something physical.
Sure.
And she also claimed that the grandfather clock that we had would not stop dinging. Mm-hmm. Now, that grandfather clock that we had never dinged. It was for it was just for decoration only. There were no clock weights in it. It never functioned. It was just there for decoration only. And yet she claimed it wouldn't stop dinging. So she said, that may be why you guys think the house is haunted, is your clock's broke. Well, it doesn't work. So yeah. I don't know how you heard it ding. So yeah, crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, that's always funny. It's like, you got to be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. And then, I guess the person walked out of it as with skeptical reasoning. But when you look at the facts of the matter, it was very profound activity.
Oh, absolutely. And my sister decided that she would, because her friend was like, no, I know what I heard. So my sister brought her back to the house that night, mm-hmm. showed her the clock, showed her how the clock weights aren't in it. It doesn't ding. It's for decoration only. And upon proving that, her friend just couldn't get out of that house fast enough.
It just became real. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. She's a believer.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like the curious thing is that the house was very profound at making itself known. It wasn't, a lot of times paranormal activity is just catching lightning in a bottle. It's like things may happen, and for whatever rhyme or reason, they happen on their own schedule for their own reasons, but a lot of times there's nobody there to observe it, I think, like things may just occur, but it's amazing that there was such an intelligence behind this situation. Like it had no trouble letting you know it was there.
Yeah, I agree totally. And, and it was always when someone was alone. I wish it would have happened when, people were there together, but it was always when you were alone. It chose, certain times to reveal itself, but only if you were alone.
That's incredible. So what do we got left?
So I think the last experience that I can remember mm-hmm. is, I think I was about 19 or 20. I was still living there, and I'd worked the next day. I went to bed early. My dad was out in his garage with everyone, and I heard this odd sound. It sounded like somebody jingling a change in their hand at the end of my bed. And I thought, well, that's weird. I didn't think it was anything paranormal. I just thought, okay, I left change maybe on the end of my bed and it's falling off.
Right.
Oh, I'll get up and just, take care of it. Mm-hmm. I get up, I turn the light on, and then the sound goes from the end of my bed to behind my dresser.
Oh.
And what? That's weird. Okay, maybe something's going on there. So I go over to the dresser and I move it and it stops. So I thought, I still didn't think anything weird was going on. I just thought, okay, it's, I don't know, something.
Sure.
And some household function maybe is causing this. So I go back to bed, and as soon as I turn the light off and get into bed, I hear that same noise again, like change jingling at the end of my bed again. And back then, I remember hearing things about paranormal saying, if you speak to the entity, speak to the ghost, ask it to stop doing something, mm-hmm. Maybe it will, reply with, stopping its activity. So I spoke out loud and said, can you please stop? I have work tomorrow. I need to get some sleep. Please stop. And it stopped.
Oh, neat. Okay.
So I just thought, okay, well, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. Now, as you reflect back on this, other than your stepmom getting held down and not being able to move, the rest of the activity really just seems mischievous, benign, maybe boisterous, but the encounter she had, of course, was much different, but it might have been her triggering that with the dismissal, like, oh, that's nothing, it's just a bunch of bunk, whatever, and it's like, okay, I'm going to show you bunk, and then she had that incredibly aggressive experience. But as you reflect back on it, do you feel like you were in danger ever, or that you just shared space with the spirit?
I never felt like I was in danger at all whatsoever.
Okay.
And, I lived there for about 20 years, maybe a little less. I never felt like I was in danger. I don't think anyone did. I agree with your theory. I think it was just a little mischievous, wanting to make its presence known, letting people know it's there. And I believe that, my stepmother being attacked, I believe it did take offense to her dismissing him as not being real. And I think he, stepped forward to say, and take action as
Right.
prove to her, well, I'm here.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. So I'm going to prove it to you. And he did.
And she had never had any other following experiences after that?
He never admitted to that anyway.
Sure. And you're right.
The fact that she would never speak about that encounter ever in any way, shape, or form, which was kind of odd sometimes, because we would bring it up and she wouldn't even look you in the eye. She would go into some kind of weird state of mind to where she wasn't acknowledging what was going on.
Right.
To the point to where I would do it purposely sometimes, just to not to be mean or cruel, just to, be absolutely certain that that's what she's doing.
Right.
Like, actually just dismissing all this entirely. And she was, which I don't blame her. I probably would too.
Right.
So, if anything happened after that, no one, at least to my knowledge, was aware of it.
Okay. Well, that's good then, I guess. And maybe that was just the end of it. It was just like, well, I'm here. Now I'm here. And that was the acknowledgement that it was after. But does your family still own this property?
No, they sold that about 25 years ago.
Okay.
And my wife and I did go there about 4.5 years ago when we were engaged, because I wanted to show her where I grew up.
Sure.
And there was a lady on the front porch, and I approached her because I was hoping she would let us in to see it, because I explained to her, this is my fiance, we're getting married. I was just showing her where I grew up. I was hoping she would say, oh, well, come on in and look at the house. But she didn't. She just said, well, if you want, you can drive around the house and look at the yard, but
sure, no
invitation to go in.
Yeah, in today's day and age, that doesn't surprise me a whole lot, but yeah. Yeah. I think it would be curious to know if the activity continues,
As would I, because if she would have invited us in, that's exactly where I would have went after a few minutes of, meeting her and,
sure,
greeting her. And that's exactly where I would have went, after a few minutes. Have you seen anything? Have you experienced anything? Because I would be somewhat surprised if she didn't. I mean, certainly, I'm sure something happened.
Right. Now, the other curiosity, RJ, is have you experienced activity following your experiences in this house? Do you have other encounters that have happened throughout the course of your life?
Actually, I do.
Uh-huh.
And it's not very many, it's few, but the house that I live in now, I've been here about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
After I first moved in, I heard footsteps coming down the hallway. I didn't think I heard them. I heard them heel to toe.
Oh.
Steps in the middle of the night. I got up, grabbed a weapon, walking out of the door to absolutely believing someone would be there. No one was there. And of course, I searched the house high and low, went outside, looked around the yard. No one was there. Don't know what that was. It was very odd.
Yeah.
And haven't really experienced anything like that since. But yeah, I'll never forget that. I'm not sure I don't believe there's anything here, but.
Right. Well, I mean, the reason that I ask, of course, is that there definitely seems to be a correlation between those who have had experiences and the fact that they, a lot of times, continue to have at least some experiences following that. And I think that maybe living in a space that is so uniquely energetically active, I don't know if that's proper grammar or not, but I think you know what I mean. But I think it does change us in a way, after having experiences. Maybe it wakes up an awareness that most people just aren't tuned into, or a sensitivity, and maybe even a sensitivity of these spirits to us, so that's why I was asking is do you notice that continue?
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't look for activity, and I certainly don't want to experience it, but if it happens, it happens, and it is what it is. But a couple other things that happened is I downloaded an EVP app on my phone. Sure how accurate those things are, but it is what it is.
Right.
I was at a local grocery store just this past Sunday, and there was a murder-suicide there, and it's on the news. You can look it up. And an 18-year-old boyfriend walked in, killed his girlfriend who was a worker, and a 40-year-old woman who was shopping there. So I know, very, very sad. And, this is a small town in Indiana, so, things like that don't really happen, thankfully.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting in line, and I thought I would pull my phone out and, see if there's anything there. And I asked if anyone was there and if there was anything they would like to say, and their response was murdered.
Oh, wow.
So
that's pretty short odds that would happen. Yeah.
That's what I thought. It's just, what are the odds of that coming up with that question?
Wow.
And, lastly, just this morning, I was married previously, and my wife passed away about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And just this morning, I always wish her holidays, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving. So this morning, I wished her Happy Thanksgiving on my app, on my EVP app on my phone, and it responded, "We can talk." So I said, okay. I said, I forgot what I asked her, to be honest with you. I don't remember, because the reply shook me. The reply was, "Where are my ashes?" And I had her cremated. That just blew my mind.
Right. Yep.
What are the odds of that?
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
I just,
it's very true that, with those apps, it's kind of a dice roll, because you're trusting in the integrity of the person making them. But when you get correlations like that, that's where it really becomes pretty powerful. I mean, because if it's just a random database of words that spit out algorithmically at certain intervals, then, it's a database of words. And what are the opportunities that you would have several correlating answers? And those are pretty astronomical odds. So
that's exactly what I thought, because of course, I figured, well, it's probably just an algorithm. It spits out words randomly, and most of them won't make sense. But when she replied, I guess I can say, "Where are my ashes?" I just was flabbergasted.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful. Very cool. Well, RJ, it's been really fascinating talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with not only me, but all our listeners. And, I hope if anything else comes up, you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to be a guest again on your show. It's a great show. I listen to it every day at work. You keep me entertained. I love hearing all these experiences of other people out there and what they've encountered and everything that happens in this weird world of ours with time slips and UFOs and whatnot. So
yeah, amen, brother. And the hole keeps getting deeper, but yeah, I'm glad you're on the journey with me, and thank you for becoming a part of it and sharing your experiences.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the story of the house I grew up in. I've been wanting to do it for quite some time, and I appreciate it.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Get out!
Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.